going live on Facebook now. All right, we are live on Zoom and live on Facebook. Welcome to those of you joining us. Just in just a moment, I'll give us our introduction and then we'll get started. We're just going to wait one more minute here while everything loads.
I'm always kind of afraid to be on Facebook, like it's going to steal my soul, you know?
It might, I mean, from what I've heard.
Yeah, or it might already have it as far as I know. I don't know.
It's definitely got mine. It's too late for me. All right. So welcome everyone to the Fox Cities Book Festival presentation of Stephen Graham Jones. I'm going to do a brief introduction and then we will get started here. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so welcome to the Reimagined Fox Cities Book Festival 2020. My name is Sarah Reed from the Kaukauna Public Library. Our mission at the festival is to celebrate books to create an engaged community of readers. To engage our communities, we offer an annual program called Fox Cities Reads. For the Reads, we partner with all our area public libraries to offer the community a selected title to read, think, talk, listen, and grow together. Each fall, we also offer a week-long festival featuring local, state, and nationally known authors. And the best part is the festival is always free. The Fox Cities Book Festival prides itself on connecting readers and writers with no barriers. But freely offered events are not free for us. If you think that free access to the arts is important, we encourage you to support the Fox Cities Book Festival. If you think that it is important for us to continue to help book authors and for our local schools, we encourage you to support the Fox Cities Book Festival. If you think that supporting local authors is important, we encourage you to support the Fox Cities Book Festival. If you think that having an engaged community of readers is important, we encourage you to support the Fox Cities Book Festival. If you just like to meet authors in person when there isn't a pandemic, we encourage you to support the Fox Cities Book Festival. Without the support of these sponsors, we wouldn't have a festival. If we want to continue this important Fox Cities tradition started by our very own poet laureate Ellen Court, then we need you to act now and consider a gift to the Fox Cities Book Festival. During the presentation today, we ask you to follow our code of conduct. Our mission is to connect readers with authors. The Fox Cities Book Festival has maintained a commitment to creating a welcoming and supportive experience for all involved. In order to ensure our events are safe and enjoyable for all, please agree to these codes of conduct, which you can see here on your screen. We want everyone's experience with the festival to be enjoyable and valuable. We thank you for your cooperation and for the respect for our authors, volunteers, and attendees. As Stephen is speaking, we encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen on Zoom. We'll have time for questions towards the end of the presentation. If you'd like to purchase books, we have a bookshop.org link through the foxcitiesbookfestival.org website where your purchase will support the festival and of course the authors. So now the moment you've been waiting for. Today, I would like to introduce Stephen Graham Jones, our guest here. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So you are going to read for us to begin with, right?
I will, yes, and I'll even read something of mine, probably.
That would be best. I recommend that enthusiastically.
I will read the prologue of The Only Good Indians here. Let me get it close. Yeah, the book with the antlers on the front. All righty. Let's see. I don't know. You don't. I guess since it's a prologue, all you need to know is that the book opened. You know, that's about it. And the book opened, and here's the first of it. Williston, North Dakota. The headline for Richard Bossribs would be Indian Man Killed in Dispute Outside Bar. That's one way to say it. Ricky had hired on with the drilling crew over in North Dakota. Because he was the only Indian, he was chief. Because he was new and probably temporary, he was always the one getting sent down to guide the chain. Each time he came back with all his fingers, he would flash thumbs up all around the platform to show how he was lucky, how none of this was ever going to touch him. Ricky Boss Ribs. He'd split from the reservation all at once when his little brother Cheeto had overdosed in someone's living room. The television, Ricky was told, tuned to that camera that just looked down on the IGA parking lot all the time. That was the part Ricky couldn't stop cycling through his head. That's the channel only the serious old of the elders had watched. It was just a running reminder how shit the reservation was, how boring, how nothing. And his little brother didn't even watch normal television much, couldn't sit still for it, would have been reading comic books, if anything. Instead of shuffling around the wake and standing out at the family plot up behind East Glacier, everybody parked on the logging road behind it, so they'd have to come right up to the graves to turn their cars around. Ricky ran away to North Dakota. His plan was Minneapolis. He knew some cats there, but then halfway there, the oil crew had been hiring, so they liked Indians because of their built-in cold resistance. It meant they might not slip off in winter. Ricky, sitting in the orange doghouse trailer for that interview, had nodded, yeah, Blackfeet didn't care about the cold, and no, he wouldn't leave them short-handed in the middle of a week. What he didn't say was you don't get cold resistant because your jackets suck. You just stop complaining about it after a while because complaining doesn't make you any warmer. He also didn't say that first paycheck, he was gone to Minneapolis. Bye. The foreman interviewing him had been thick and windburned and sort of blonde, with a beard like a Brillo pad. When he'd reached across the table to shake Ricky's hand and look him in the eye while he did it, the modern world had fallen away for a long blink, and the two of them were standing in a canvas tent. The foreman in a cavalry jacket, and Ricky already had designs on that jacket's brass buttons. Wasn't thinking at all of the paper on the table between them that he just made his mark on. This had been happening more and more to him the last few months. Ever since hunting went bad last winter, and right up through the interview to now, not even stopping for Cheeto dying on that couch. Cheeto hadn't been his born name, but he had freckles and orange hair, so it wasn't a name he could shake either. Ricky wondered how the funeral had gone. He wondered if right now there was a big muley nosing up to the chicken wire fence all around these dead Indians. He wondered what that big muley saw, really, if it was just waiting all these two-leggers out. Cheeto would have thought it was a pretty deer, Ricky figured. He had never been a kid to get up early with Ricky to be out in the trees when light broke. He hadn't liked killing anything except bears. Probably would have been vegetarian if that was an option on the res. His orange hair put enough of a bullseye on his back, though. Eating rabbit food would have just got more dumb Indians lining up to put him down. But then he died on that couch anyway, not even from anybody else, just from himself. At which point Ricky figured he'd get out as well. Screw it. Sure, he could be this cruise chain monkey for a week or two. Yeah, he could sleep four to a doghouse with all these white boys, the wind rocking the trailer. No, he didn't mind being chief, though he knew that had he been around back in the days of raiding and running down buffalo, he'd have been a grunt then as well. Whatever the bow and arrow version of a chain monkey was, that'd be Ricky Boss Ribs' station. When he was a kid, there'd been a picture book in the library about heads smashed in or whatever it was called, the Buffalo Jump, where the old-time Blackfeet ran herd after herd off the cliff. Ricky remembered that the boy selected to drape a calf robe over his shoulders and run out in front of all those buffalo. He'd been the one to win all the races the elders had put him and all the other kids in. And he'd been the one to climb all the trees the best, because you needed to be fast to run ahead of all those tons of meat. You needed good hands to, at the last moment after sailing off the cliff, grab onto the rope the men had already left there that would tuck you up under, safe. What had it been like sitting there while the buffalo flowed down through the air within arm's reach, bellowing, their legs probably stiff because they didn't know for sure when the ground was coming? What had it felt like bringing meat to the whole tribe? They'd almost done it last Thanksgiving. Him and Gabe and Lois and Cass, they'd meant to. They were going to be those kind of Indians for once. They had been going to show everybody in Browning that this is the way it's done. But then the big wet snow had come in and everything had gone pretty much straight to hell, leaving Ricky out here in North Dakota like he didn't know any better than to come in out of the cold. All he was going to hunt in Minneapolis was tacos and a bed. But until then, this beer would work. The bar was all roughnecks, wall to wall. No fights yet, would give it time. There was another Indian, Dakota probably, nursing a bottle in a corner by the pool tables. He'd acknowledged Ricky, and Ricky had nodded back, but there was as much distance between the two of them as there was between Ricky and his crew. More important, there was a blonde waitress balancing a tray of empties between and among. 50 sets of eyes were tracking her easy. To Ricky, she looked like the tall girl Lewis had run off to Great Falls with in July, but she'd probably already left his ass, meaning now Lewis was sitting in a bar down there just like this one, peeling the label off his beer just the same. Ricky lifted his bottle in greeting across all the miles. 4 beers and 9 country songs later, he was standing in line for the urinal, except the line was snaking all back down the hall already. And the last time he'd been in there, there'd already been guys pissing in the trash can and the sink both. The air in there was gritty and yellow, almost crunched between Ricky's teeth when he'd accidentally opened his mouth. It wasn't any worse than the honeypots out at the rig, but out at the rig, you could just unzip wherever, let fly. Ricky backed out, drained his beer because cops love an Indian with a beer bottle in the great outdoors, and made to push his way out for a breath of fresh air, maybe a fence post in desperate need of watering. At the exit, the bouncer opened his meaty hand against Ricky's chest, warned him about leaving. Something about the head count and the fire marshal. Ricky looked past the open door to the clump of roughnecks and cowboys waiting to come in, their eyes flashing up to him but not asking for anything. It was a queue Ricky would have to mill around in to wait his turn to get back in, but it was starting to not really be his decision anymore, right? Inside of maybe 90 seconds here, he was going to be peeing. So anyway, he could up the chances of being someplace where he could do that without making a mess of himself. Well, he could stand in a 30-minute line to eyeball that blonde waitress some more, sure. Ricky turned sideways to slip past the bouncer, nodding that he knew what he was doing, and already a roughneck was stepping forward to take his place. There wasn't even any time to stiff-leg it over beside the bar by the steaming pile of bags the dumpsters were. Ricky just walked straight ahead out into the sea of crew cab trucks parked more or less in rows. And on the way, he unleashed almost before he could come to a stop, had to lean back from it because this was a serious fire hose situation. He closed his eyes from the purest pleasure he'd felt in weeks, and when he opened them, he had the feeling he wasn't alone anymore. He steeled himself. Only stupid Indians brushed past a bunch of hard-handed white dudes, each of them sure that seat you had in the bar should have, by right, been theirs. They're cool with the chief among them being the chain monkey, but when it comes down to who has an eyeline on the white woman, that's another thing altogether, isn't it? Stupid, Ricky told himself. Stupid, stupid, stupid. He looked ahead to the hood he was going to hip slide over. The bed of the truck he hoped wasn't piled with ankle-breaking equipment because that was his next step. A clump of white men can beat an Indian into the ground. Yeah, no doubt about it. Happens every weekend up here on the High Line, but they have to catch his ass first. And now that he was, by his figure, and about 3 fluid pounds lighter and sobering up fast, no way was even the ex-running back of them going to hook a finger into Ricky's shirt. Ricky grinned a tight-lipped grin to himself and nodded for courage, dislodging all the rifles he couldn't keep stacked up in his head, rifles that were actually behind the seat of his truck back at the site. When he left Browning, he'd taken them all, even his uncles and granddads. They were all in the same closet by the front door. And then grabbed the gallon baggie of random shells, figuring some of them had to go to these guns. The idea had been that he was going to need stake money when he hit Minneapolis, and rifles turned to cash faster than just about anything. Except then he'd found work along the way, and he got to thinking about his uncles needing to fill their freezer for the winter. Standing in the sprawling parking lot of the Roughneck Bar in North Dakota, Ricky promised to mail every one of those back. Would he have to pull the bolts, though? Mail them in separate packages from the rifles so the rifles wouldn't really be rifles anymore? Ricky didn't know, but he did know that right now he wanted that pump 30-06 in his hands. To shoot if it came to that, but mostly just to swing around. The open end of the barrel leaving half moons in cheeks and eyebrows and rib cages, the butt perfect for jaws. He might be going down in this parking lot in a puddle of his own piss, but these grimy white boys were going to remember that Blackfeet, and think twice the next time they saw one of him walking into their bar. If only Gabe were here. Gabe liked this kind of shit, playing cowboys and Indians in all the parking lots of the world. He'd do his stupid war whoop and just rush the hell in. Might as well have been 150 years ago for him, every single day of his ridiculous life. When you're with him, though, with Gabe, Ricky narrowed his eyes, nodded to himself again for strength, to fake it anyway, to try to be like Gabe here. When Ricky was with Gabe, he'd always want to give a whoop like that, too. The kind that made it where, when he turned around to face these white boys, it'd feel like he was holding a tomahawk in his hand. It'd feel like his face was painted in harsh, crumbly blacks and whites, maybe a single finger wide line of red on the right side. The years can just fall away, man. So, Ricky said, his hands balled into fists, chest already heaving, and turned around to get this over with, his teeth clenched tight so that if he was turning around into a fist, it wouldn't rattle him too much. But no one? What the, Ricky said, cutting himself off because there was something, yeah. A huge dark form clambering over a pearly white, out of place 280Z. Not a horse either, like he'd knee jerked into his head. Ricky had to smile. This was an elk, wasn't it? A big, meaty spike, too dumb to know that this was where the people went, not the animals. It blew through its nostrils and launched into the truck to its right, leaving the pretty sloped down hood of that little Nissan tacoed up at the edges, stomped all down in the middle. But at least the car had been quiet about it. The truck the elk had slammed into was much more insulted, screaming its shrill alarm loud enough that the spike grabbed onto the ground with all four hooves. Instead of the 20 logical paths it could have taken away from this sound, it scrabbled up across the loud truck's hood, fell off into the between space on the other side. And now that drunk little elk was banging into another truck and another. All the alarms were going off, all the lights glowing back and forth. What is into you, man? Ricky said to the spike, impressed. The feeling didn't last long. Now the spike was turned around, was barreling down an aisle between the cars, Ricky right in its path, its head down like a mature bull. Ricky threw himself to the side into another truck, setting off another alarm. You want some of me? Ricky yelled at the elk, reaching over into the bed of a random truck. He came up with a jawless, oversized crescent wrench that would be a good enough deterrent, he figured. He hoped. Never mind he was outweighed by a cool 500 pounds. Never mind that elk don't do this. When he heard the spike blow behind him, he turned already swinging, crashing the crescent wrench's round head into the side mirror of a tall Ford. The big Ford's alarm screamed, flashed every light it had, and when Ricky turned around to shuffling hooves behind him, it wasn't hooves this time, but boots. All the roughnecks and cowboys were waiting to get into the bar. All the roughnecks and cowboys waiting to get into the bar. Ricky said, holding the wrench like a tire beater, every second truck in his immediate area flashing in pain and showing the pounding they'd just taken. He saw it too, saw them seeing it. This Indian had got himself mistreated in the bar, didn't know who drove what, so he's taking it out on every truck in the parking lot. Typical. Momentarily, one of these white boys was going to say something about Ricky being off the reservation, and then what was supposed to happen could get proper started. Useless, unless Ricky, say, wanted to maybe live. He dropped the wrench into the slush, held his hand out, said, No, you don't understand. But they did. When they stepped forward to put him down in time-honored fashion, Ricky turned, flopped half over the 280Z he hadn't trashed, endured a bad moment when somebody's reaching fingers were hooked into a belt loop, but he spun his hips hard, tore through, fell down and ahead, his hands to the ground for a few overbalanced steps. A beer bottle lit by his head shattered on a grill guard right in front of him, and he threw his hands up to keep his eyes safe, veered what he thought was around the truck, but not enough. His hip caught the last upright of the guard, spun him around into another truck with another stupid alarm. Fuck you, he yelled at the truck, to all the trucks, all the cowboys, just North Dakota and oil fields in America in general, and then, running hard down a lane between trucks, hitching himself ahead with more mirrors, two of them coming off in his hands, he felt a smile well up on his face. Gabe's smile. This is what it feels like then. Yes, Ricky screamed, the rush of adrenaline and fear sloshing up behind his eyes, crashing over his every thought. He turned around and ran backwards so he could point with both hands at the roughnecks. 4 steps into this big, important gesture, he fell out into open space, kind of like a turn row in a plowed field, caught his left boot on a rock or a frozen clump of bullshit grass, went sprawling. Behind him, he could see dark shapes vaulting over whole truck beds, their cowboy hats lifting with them, not coming down, just becoming part of the night. White boys can move, he said to himself, less certain of all this, and pivoted. Rose was moving again, too. When the footfalls and boot slaps were too close enough he couldn't handle it, knew this was it, Ricky grabbed a fiberglass dually fender, used it to swing himself a sharp and sudden 90 degrees into what would have been the truck's long side, what should have been its side, but he was sliding now. He was going under, leading with the slick heels of his work boots. This was the kind of getting away he learned at 12 years old when he could slither and snake. The truck was just tall enough for him to slide under through the muck, his momentum carrying him halfway across. To get across the rest of the truck's width, he reached up for a handhold, the skin of his palm and the underside of his fingers immediately smoking from the 3-inch exhaust pipe. Ricky yelped but kept moving, came up on the other side of the truck fast enough that he slammed into a beater that didn't have an alarm. 2 truck lengths ahead, the dark shapes were pulling their best 180, casting left and right for the Indian. Duck, Ricky told himself and disappeared, ran at a crouch that felt military, like he was in a trench, like shells were flying, and they might as well be. There he is, a roughneck bellowed, and his voice was far enough off that Ricky knew he was wrong, that they were about to pile onto somebody else for 10 or 20 seconds until they realized this was no Indian. 10 trucks between him and them, finally. Ricky stood to his full height to make sure it wasn't that Dakota dude catching the heat. I'm right here, Ricky said to the roughnecks, not really loud enough. Then turned, stepped through the last line of trucks, out into the ditch of the narrow ribbon of blacktop that had brought him here, that ran between the bar's parking lot and miles of frozen grasslands. So it was going to be a walking night then, a hiding from every pair of headlights night, a cold night. Good thing I'm Indian, he told himself, sucking in to get the zipper on his jacket started. Cold doesn't matter to Indians, does it? He snorted a laugh, flipped the whole bar off without turning around, just an over-the-shoulder thing with his smoldering hand, then stepped up onto the faded asphalt right as a bottle burst beside his boot. He flinched, drew in, looked behind him to the massive shadows that were just arms and legs and crew cuts now, moving over the trucks. They'd seen him, made his Indian silhouette out against all this pale, frozen grass. He hissed a pissed-off blast of air through his teeth, shook his head once side to side, and straight-legged it across the asphalt to see how committed they might be. They want an Indian bad enough tonight to run out into the open prairie in November, or would it be enough just to run him off? Instead of trudging the gravel and ice of the opposite shoulder, Ricky took it at a slide, let his momentum stand him up once his boot heels caught grass, then transferred all that into a leaning forward run that was going to have been a fall, even if he hadn't caught the top strand of the fence in his gut. He flipped over easy as anything, the strand giving up its staples halfway through, just to be sure his face planted all the way into the crunchy grass on the other side. Ricky rolled over, his face to the wash of stars spread against all the blackness, and considered that maybe he should have just stayed home, gone to Cheeto's funeral. He maybe shouldn't have stolen his family's guns. He maybe should have never even left the res at all. He was right. When he stood, there was a sea of green eyes staring back at him from right there, where there was just supposed to be frozen grass and distance. There was a great herd of elk waiting, blocking him in, and there was a great herd pressing in behind him too, a herd of men already on the blacktop themselves, their voices rising, hands balled into fists, eyes flashing light. Indian man killed in dispute outside bar. That's one way to say it. Thank you.
That was awesome, Stephen.
Man, I lost my place a couple of times. The words started all like jumping all over the page.
Well, we couldn't tell. It sounded great. So I had the pleasure of reading this book actually early, but then also it came out this summer. And then you've had another book, The Night of the Mannequins, came out this fall.
Yeah.
So, oh, well, there it is. Yeah. Right there. Awesome. What's it been like releasing these two titles during a pandemic, and how's that affected your book release?
It's hard to know how it's affected the release numbers wise, because you need a control, and how do you do a control in a situation like this, of course. But I know that for me, what it's felt like is a lot of Zoom events, a whole lot of Zoom bookstore events, panels, guest of honor things. Like today, this is my third event, and I feel like my soul is just going straight to this camera, but I kind of like it too, because this means that I'm home with my family more. This means that usually at a con, I'll finish my panel or my event, and then, it takes an hour and a half to make it up to my room, and in a Zoom event, the meeting ends and I stand up and I can go directly into my living room with my family, and that's really pretty nice. I like it a lot. So that's the big way that this pandemic has affected book releases for me, is that I'm not on planes all the time. And I like being on planes. I like traveling around. Don't get me wrong. I don't like new restaurants, but I like the traveling part. But I like being home even more.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a question from the audience here, so I'll intersperse those with my own questions. And for those of you attending and listening, you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit questions for us. So Jamie says, this book was amazing, all caps. I agree. Can you tell us about your character development? This whole book is not like reading a story with characters, but instead like hearing them speak next to you with unbelievable authenticity.
Well, thank you so much. Man, I don't know if I have a solid answer for you there. I know that I can't do the kind of like seriously privileged omniscience that Tolstoy could do, or Somerset Maugham, or some of them old cats. You know, they had like an inborn license to look in people's heads. Like everybody at the party, like you know, that just blows me away. And Tolstoy would even get carried away. I remember in War and Peace, he's cycling through everybody's head at the party so he can understand all the complicated dynamics. And then he drops into the dog's head, and I'm like, dude, you should slow down a little. You know, you should consider this. But that's my only halfway answer, is that I don't have that kind of license, that kind of privilege. So I have to climb into the character's head and look out through their eye holes, basically. And you know, back in the 90s, we used to talk about a character's perspective or attitude or education or whatever, infecting the prose. And I would always think, infecting, that it's good, it's not bad, but everybody would say, don't let that happen. But I think I've let that happen, you know.
I think it's good that you've
I don't know why you wouldn't want it to happen.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you there. So you work in a variety of genres, from, well, I'll say you are my favorite author. I'll come out and say it. And The Only Good Indians is my new favorite of your books. And my previous favorite, All the Beautiful Sinners, definitely is more thoroughly horror, I would almost say. Not so much as The Least of My Scars, though, where you go full horror. But then you've also written young adult books like the one you co-wrote with Paul Tremblay. So what's it like moving between all these different genres so much?
You know, back in, this is probably 2002, right before Beautiful Sinners came out, I was on a panel down in Austin with Joe Lansdale, and I'd met him on that panel. He's a good friend now, but I had never known him before then. I'd only read him. And we were on a Conan the Barbarian panel, which is a dream, you know. And at the end, in the Q&A period, somebody raised their hand out there and they said, "Hey, Joe, what genre do you write in?" And without even missing a beat, he said, "I write the Joe R. Lansdale genre." And I realized like a thing went off in my head. I'm like, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I want to do someday. You know, I want to, it's not about having a big enough fan base that you can bring them from this book to that book or anything like that, or maybe that's part of it, I don't know. But for me, it's about not getting hemmed in and trapped by either the market or the publisher. Like publishers always want the same book with like slight variations, you know. And that's why I've been with so many different publishers, because I always manage to wiggle out of my second book option and I write something different, like young adult or crime or fake memoir or whatever, because different things interest me. You know, back in 2002, also, I had a publisher trying to lock me up. They said, "We want you to write one thriller a year for us from here on out." And they were going to pay me pretty good money. And I said, "Oh, that's no problem at all. I'll do that in a month. You know, I'll give you 12 books really quickly or whatever." And they said, "But you can't do any of your ridiculous science fiction or fantasy or any of that ridiculous weird stuff you're doing, like Bird is Gone." And I said, wait, you want me to do one book only a year? And number one, like one book only a year seems like hardly any books, you know. But number two, I just can't imagine being trapped in a single genre. That would, I mean, I just like be bouncing off the walls, you know.
Yeah, that's an easy no deal there for that one. So you kind of bring up a point, as one of my other questions, is that you're known for being extremely prolific, to the point where you mentioned once that your agent had to ask you to slow down, which is unheard of in publishing. So what's your writing process like, and where did you find the recipe for the alchemist stone for productivity?
Yeah, no, I feel sorry for my agent because I write a lot of novels and she has to read them all, you know. And, and like not all of them find the shelves, not all of them get submitted even, you know. But I write a whole lot of novels. I just love to write. As for how to go quick or how to go fast, I mean, I guess my answer would be just low standards. You know, just don't think you're like, I don't think I'm writing for forever. I don't think that I'm in any sense going to be the Dickens of, the 20th or 21st century. Um, I think that if I have any kind of job, it's to entertain somebody on their train ride home or something, and I think because of that, I don't feel like all of history looking over my shoulder, and so I can just cook. I can just go fast. And another reason I write a lot of junk is because I really like to have my fingers busy. Like, I've got so many, like, I can't even hold them all up. I've got so many toys around here because while I'm talking to you or whoever, my fingers have to be busy and doing stuff. And I've found that keyboards are a wonderful way to keep my fingers busy, and when I write, I don't have to think either. And I love not thinking. Not thinking is the ideal. I don't thinking sucks. I think you write with your heart, and feeling is wonderful. Feeling can go bad too, but at the keyboard, it generally feels pretty good for me. And yeah, I just love to sit at the keyboard and keep my fingers busy and not think,
Yeah. How many books do you think you've written that are stored away somewhere that you've never even shown to your agent?
Oh man, that I haven't shown to my agent, my current agent. There's probably 10 or so. But I think people always ask me, how many novels have you written? And I know they're asking how many have you published, and that's like, I don't know, 22, 25. I don't know. It's some amount, some number that's under 30. Say what? Yeah, it's 25. I think it's like 25 or 28 books, but some of them are skinny books, like Night of the Mannequins. Some of them are story collections. That I co-wrote that book with Paul. Do I round up for that one? I never know what's ahead of count, so I just don't worry about it too much, But what if I have to honestly answer how many novels have you written? I've never actually counted, but I would guess it's got to be probably between 42 and 47, I would guess, So I've probably got 15 or 20 that may never see the light of day,
That breaks my heart.
I don't think they're good. They're like I'm the way I rewrite. I don't like to read. I will, of course, revise. Editors and everybody always makes me make this better, make this not so bad, all that kind of stuff. But to tell you the truth, my favorite way to revise is to write a novel and realize it doesn't work. And instead of working on that novel, I write a new novel in which I try not to make that mistake again. That's the way I like to revise, which is kind of the way, if you know Doomsday from Superman, that's how he got to be such a tough dude. Somebody took him as an infant and threw him out the door of their lab into this terribly harsh planet that killed him instantly. And then they harvested that genetic material. They did that like 1,000 times until he was the toughest baby in the world, and that's how I like to write novels. I like to move slowly and incrementally to the toughest novel I can do,
So were there earlier incremental movements of The Only Good Indians as well?
I wrote The Only Good Indians because in 2017, well, I guess in 2015 or 16, I wrote Mapping the Interior for Ellen Datlow at Tor.com. And that hit the market in 2017, I guess, or hit the shelf. That's a better way to say that, probably. And she said, "Hey, why don't you give me another novella?" And I was like, "Sure." That took me 4 days. I got 4 days to kill, And so I sat down to write a second novella, and I got to the end of the first part of The Only Good Indians, The House That Ran Red, and I finished it. I thought, well, that was pretty. Novellas are fun, but I accidentally came up with a second line that I could use instead of that last line that would open it up into a novel. So I texted my agent and I said, "Hey, I just did something, and it can turn into a novel or it can stay a novella. What do you want me to do?" And she said, "Go ahead and let it be a novel. It's easier to sell novels. You can always write another novella." And so I let it turn into a novel. And so then I sat down to write a novella for Datlow.
Yeah.
And I accidentally wrote a novel, and I did it again. I accidentally wrote a novel. So I wrote 3 novels trying to write Night of the Mannequins. Then I finally wrote Night of the Mannequins.
It's a pretty good problem to have, it sounds like. So we have another question from the audience here. Margaret wants to know if you'll talk a bit about the choice of your title for The Only Good Indians.
Yeah, it was, this novel was originally, when I wrote it, called Where the Old Ones Go, which is now a chapter title, of course. And I had the sense, well, I can't say this without spoiling it, but I knew who the old ones were in the novel. I guess maybe that'll not spoil it. And I knew where they went, sort of. But gave it to the editor. Editor bought it, and I think at that time it was actually called Elkhead Woman. That was someone else had made me change it to Elkhead Woman, and so we got it all edited, and we got the prologue used to not be the prologue. It used to come a few chapters into the Sweat Lodge Massacre, and the novel changed tremendously. The first part used to be in second person, that is surprise dramatic monologue, but then it became third person. So we made so many changes to it. And then at the very end, the editor said, "Hey, also this title sucks. What if you had a good title?" And I was like, "Yeah, what if? Wouldn't that be great?" And he said, "Give me some more titles." And so I started hitting him with titles, and none of them were landing with him. And maybe I was like secretly trying to shoot myself in the foot, because I thought if I never come up with a title, I can use where the old ones go, but that wasn't going to be the case. Anyways, I finally had the idea to move the title of the second part, Sweat Lodge Massacre, to the cover as the title. And I thought, what can I call the second part then? I thought, I'll call it the Only Good Indians, because that'll be kind of funny in the middle of the book. And I pitched that to my editor, and he said, first, no to Sweat Lodge Massacre. 2, The Only Good Indians is the title of this novel. And, I was like, whoa, I can't, I was afraid that saying The Only Good Indians on a book cover might give people permission to start saying The Only Good Indian is a dead Indian, and I felt weird about that. I felt like, Dave Chappelle, when he quit the Chappelle Show, he says that the reason he quit was he was doing one of his ridiculous, fun sketches for the crew one day. They were filming it, and I think he was in like minstrel makeup, and he was going through his routine, and everybody's laughing, but he said there was one guy back in the corner who was laughing in a different way, and he realized that guy is not getting the irony I'm doing or something. And that's the same fear I had, that a whole room full of people were going to they'll understand what I was doing with the title The Only Good Indians, but there was going to be one person in the back of the room who was like, yes, the only good Indian is a dead Indian, and I felt bad about that. So I talked to a lot of friends for 2 or 3 weeks, and they all told me, yeah, this is a kind of dangerous title, but we think it'll work, and so because my friends told me that they thought it would work, I went with it. And I think it's the right title, because this is a novel that's interrogating what it means to be a good Indian in 2020, and turns out there's not a single way. There's like 7 million different ways, because that's how many of us there are,
Yeah. Have you had anyone approach you about the title that they didn't see that the weight of that title?
No, I've been, poked and prodded about whether it's too nervy to use a title like that. And I think it is kind of nervy, but maybe that's part of like the marketing, and the editor could see that, but no, as far as I know, that one person in the back of the room hasn't been snickering in the wrong way, but how do I know? This is all Zoom, so.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we can't see the snickers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Aubrey would like to know, how have classic horror stories influenced you? It's going to be a lot.
Yeah, no, totally. They control me. I think I'm on puppet strings, and they're up there in the rafters controlling me, But I'm thinking about specific horror. Really what influenced me is just the whole tradition of slashers, I guess. That's how I knew that the prologue had to come to the front, because starting out with Lewis up on that ladder, it's fun and all, but if I want to do a slashers always start with like the brutal death of someone, and you don't really know what's going on. It's just like, hey, here's a blood sacrifice. And that blood can lubricate the gears of this big machine, kind of, But so I went to the scaffolding of the genre of slasher to understand how to like re-put The Only Good Indians together in revision when I was using my brain, because you have to use your brain in revision as much as you might not want to,
It's imperative. Yeah. So I've heard people refer to The Only Good Indians as a literary slasher. How do you feel about that label for the book?
If they're saying literary to mean a book slasher, a slasher on the fiction page, then I'm great with it. I kind of do push back, or I mean to push back against the idea of literary or elevated horror, because I always feel like that's an insult to all the other horror, I think when people say literary horror, what I hear anyways is, I like this book, but I don't like the rest of horror, so I need to recategorize it a little bit such that I can allow myself to like it.
Yeah. I get that too. All right. So you teach at the MFA program at CU Boulder. What's your favorite thing about teaching, and your favorite lesson to share with your students?
My favorite lesson is just to show them my rejection letters, because I have a lot of rejection letters, and I still get rejected. Sometimes I'll have a magazine solicit a story from me, and they'll reject that story. I mean, just because you've got a lot of books out and like 300 plus stories doesn't mean that you are an automatic accept. It doesn't mean that you do it right every time, and I do it wrong a lot of the time. So I think showing my failures to my students is probably the best thing I can teach them, really. Just what I found through doing this writing thing for 20 years now is that the people when I started out, I had the daydream that talent rises, that if I'm good enough, then somebody's going to notice it eventually. And I've since come to believe something different. I don't subscribe to that anymore. What I've seen is that the people who make it are the people who just keep getting up after they're knocked down. The people who are like, yeah, that book sold 2 copies, and also my next book got a lot of bad reviews, but you know what, I'm going to write another book. The people who just keep writing are the people who insist that they're writers, who don't really have a choice but to keep writing. They're the people who have the best chance to make it, I think.
Yeah, tenacity is definitely a main ingredient in the industry. So what are you working on right now? Like besides like 5 novels, probably. Like what's the next project?
Between all these panels I've been doing today, I've been stealing like 45 minutes here and an hour there. I just finished a feature screenplay that I'm doing for a director wanted me to do it, so I did it, and it actually worked at the end. I was so nervous that this risky thing was going to crumble. That's what you always think at the end of a project. It's going to fall through my fingers. It's not actually going to work, but this one, it actually worked at the end, which completely surprises me. So yeah, that's a movie that I can't announce, I mean, who knows there's a lot of screenplays written and bought, and very few of them are produced, of course, or very, very few of them find the box office or the VOD or whatever. But this is a director who's had a lot of success, so fingers crossed, And I'm also working on a TV pilot, which I also can't announce. I'm under a very strict gag order for that one. I just got out of working in a writer's room for another show that I can't talk about. And I just got, yesterday I got notes for a slasher novel of mine that's coming out from Saga at the end of next summer. And I'm really excited about that slasher novel.
Well, you are definitely staying busy, and I'm excited about all these things that you can't talk about too.
Oh, thank you. I am too. I feel like people always talk about, what is it, vague booking, vague tweeting.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing the live version of that,
You're vague zooming us all.
Yeah.
Well, that's super exciting. I can't wait to learn about all these projects. I will keep all my fingers crossed also.
Thank you.
They will come to light. So it's been an amazing summer for the horror genre in general.
Yeah,
a lot of new titles coming out that have just been phenomenal. So do you have any recommendations for things that have come out recently that you enjoyed?
Oh man, so much good stuff. I guess right at the front of the pandemic, Sylvia Moreno Garcia's Mexican Gothic and Grady Hendrix's the Southern Book Club Guide to Slaying Vampires came out. That was a wonderful thing to head into, shut-in bill with, I think.
Yeah.
And then, Paul Tremblay's Survivor Song, Josh Malerman's Mallory, Laurel Hightower gave us Crossroads, S.A. Cosby gave us Blacktop Wasteland. I just read Jeremy Robert Johnson's The Loop, which is amazing. Adam Cesare came with Clown in a Cornfield. And I'm probably forgetting everybody, but that's a few anyways. It has been a really like rich horror summer, it feels like.
Yeah, it's been really good.
Oh, I know John Langan, Children of the Fang. He had Children of the Fang come out, and I forget about that one because I wrote the introduction, so it feels like I read it 2 years ago, which I think I did, but it actually just came out, and John does his usual thing of like his stories like worm their way into your head and like in a weird, uncomfortable way that you want horror to do,
Yeah, and like a lot of your stories do. One of my favorites of your short stories is Father, Son, Holy Rabbit, which is in The Ones That Got Away, right?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah. So you say you're working on some other short stories now. Do you see another collection coming out soon?
Oh man, I've got enough stories since after the People Lights have gone off, which was 2014.
That was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, I've got enough for about 3 collections actually. So Yeah, I would guess that within 3 years, I'll probably have another collection together. I mean, I've got it together, but it'll probably be coming out, I suspect, you know. The question is, will I do it? I'm not sure how I'll do it. I don't know. If it'll be like a greatest hits of the last 5 years, or if it'll be some sort of chronological treatment. I'm trying to think about different ways to sequence and also like encase a short story collection other than just like this is my best stuff, you know. I'm trying to think of some way a collection can be in a different sort of dialogue with the reader, and maybe I don't think of anything, you know, but maybe I do.
Well, yeah, there's been a couple of mosaic novels come
Yeah,
out in the last few years that kind of live in that space between an interconnected, more
yeah,
novel structure and short stories that have been
yeah.
really entertaining to read. Like,
Yeah, no, mosaic novels or composite novels or novels and stories or whatever you call them. There's like different. It's like they're all different way station on the train. You know.
yeah,
Um, I feel like that's what Mongrels was for me because when I started writing Mongrels, I was just writing werewolf stories, and then about 120 pages into it, I was like, you know, what if I gave these people the same name? Then it becomes a novel. You know.
that's a great way to write a novel. One of my favorite collections to recommend to people, especially patrons at the library, is States of Grace, your microfiction.
Thank you.
Um, have you been putting together any more microfiction lately? Because
I
those,
haven't. I haven't. I've written a very few. You know, those are all from a period of my life when my kids were like under 5 years old, I guess. And when your kids are under five, you're forever running around with a paper towel. You know, like I just
yeah,
part of my life was having a roll of Bounty selected size paper towels. You know, and because I always had a Bounty selected size paper towel on me. And because I'm always writing, I wrote a lot of stories on those skinny versions of the paper towel, you know. And
mhm.
flash fiction is all that'll fit on like that little like 5.5 by 13 or whatever it is, you know. And but then my kids got neater and I didn't have paper towels on me all the time. And so I think I started writing more novels because I had like an endless scroll on my page instead of a little paper towel to write on. But no, flash fiction, if I could make a living writing flash fiction, that's what I would do. Flash fiction is far and away my very favorite thing to do.
Yeah, someone get Stephen some paper towels here. We need more Stephen Graham Jones flash fiction. So, you mentioned you're doing your revisions and everything on The Only Good Indians and your rewrites there and restructuring. Were there any stories or aspects of it that you had to cut out that didn't make it into the final cut? What would be the author's preferred edition, and can you tell us any of those
Yeah, the
stories?
director's cut. No, actually, the director, if there is a director's cut, it's coming out from SST Publications. It's a special edition of Good Indians coming out, and there are a few little adjustments throughout the text and just the whole book, I guess. But um, I'm trying to think if I had to cut anything and I liked it. Let me think. I cannot think of anything that I had to throw away. I mean, the only thing I miss, and I understand why it can't be there, because it's just my own little fascination. It's not the world. It's not the readers. Like, it's not cool to readers. It's cool to me. Is initially the House That Ran Red with Louis and Peta. The first part of it was in what you think is second person until at the end it flips and you realize that's all been direct address. It's all been someone speaking to Louis, you know. And I love that escalation from second person to dramatic monologue. And I do still miss that a lot. But I mean, Saga, Joe Monty, my editor there, he let me keep the what I call slasher cam. Like in a slasher, there's always a point where you're looking through the eye holes of the killer's mask, or you're parting the branches to look at the party, or whatever it is, and that I call that slasher cam. And I wanted to do a slasher on the page, and so I needed some slasher cam. But if you break section to jump into the killer's point of view, then that section break alerts the reader to expect something different, and then they're not surprised by slasher cam. And so the editor let me keep these little drops into kind of a fakey second person to affect slasher cam and kind of hopefully keep the reader a little bit off balance, you know. And I was so lucky to get to do that, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. And I do love it when you slip into that second person narrative too. And you wrote a whole novel in second person, right? Not for
Yeah,
nothing.
I did.
Um, is your writing process different in second person, or does that just feel like a natural voice for
No,
you?
second person is far and away my second person present tense is my natural voice. Actually, everything I write, I would do in second person present tense if I could get away with it. But for some reason, the world is prejudiced against second person present tense, and I'm not sure why that is because I love it. I love to read second person novels myself. I mean, I cut my teeth on choose your own adventure novels, so maybe I just got programmed, you know. But all the nearly all the ideas that I write down in my little thing where I think of junk, you know, like we all do, they're not like George finds a cave and it's got a giant bat in it. It's like you're walking through the woods, you find a cave. You know, they're all second person, and then I have to translate them to third or first person in order to worm their way into people's heads, hopefully, you know, or to get even past the slush pile, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, they're going back to what you said too about the end of that first act in The Only Good Indians. I won't spoil anything, but there is that moment in the
Mhm,
book that
mhm.
everybody talks about. That's the moment that you know what you're in for the rest of the book. And it's it's almost like the book transformed into a different kind of story in that moment. And you said structurally, that might have been at a different point in the book. So what was it like taking that pivotal moment of the story and moving it around? Like, how did that affect your
Yeah,
revision process?
that pivotal moment you're talking about, it was always where it was. I mean, it changed its page number because it got more stuff put in front of it, I guess. So it did kind of change places. But you know, really this trick of like for me, this novel, the way it works is the first part is the first act, as you say, is a haunted house story. The second is a slasher, and the third is a monster story. Um, and I've done that. I did that before back in 2006 with Demon Theory, where the first part is a slasher, the second part is a monster, and the third part is haunted house. And I don't know why I love to do. I love to like look for those friction points between the genres and how they can inflect things to like a screechier level. I guess is what it is. And I feel like I got programmed on this in a class I took from Ralph Berry working on my doctorate at FSU. On the class was Gertrude Stein, and we read her book Three Lives, which is three novellas, three different women in each novella, as presented as a single book. And for some reason, that was such a rush to me to go from novella to novella to novella, or section to section to section, part to part to part, act to act to act, and have the focus be totally different. And I guess the lens that I see controlling that focus nowadays is genre, like subgenres within a genre. You know, like I wouldn't go from a slasher to romance. Probably that would not quite fly. You know, but I can move within the horror genre.
Yeah.
And I really just love that. I love playing with the different genres and working them against each other, and it's like they add up to more than you would think somehow. You know.
I gotta write down romance slasher real quick here.
Well, I do think that like romantic comedies and slashers are just two sides of the same coin. You know, they seem to work with the same basic beats and the same escalation and humor as tension release valve and everything. And the reason I think they're the same is that I love romantic comedies. Even bad romantic comedies, they always get me. You know, I'm like, oh, well, at least they're kissing at the end, so I'm pretty happy. You know.
Jamie points out it can usually start with romance and lead to horror.
Yeah, that definitely, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen Rena Mason pull it off, and I've seen Daniel Kahiaku pull it off,
Mhm.
blending the two.
Nice.
It can be done, but yeah, I don't know that magic spell.
Yeah.
We still have 5 minutes left, so I just want to remind the audience they can post some Q&A there. Um, and you mentioned Demon Theory, which is one of your older novels that is in the form of a screenplay. And this isn't a question because I know you can't answer, but I'm just going to out loud hope that one of the things you can't talk about has something to do with Demon Theory. Um, but do you have any cool, unique classes coming up at the university? I know, not too long ago you got to teach a werewolf class, I think it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, I do a werewolf
That you
class, a slasher, a haunted house, a zombie, but I haven't done those for probably 2 or 3 years. Right now, I'm really having a ball teaching a grad seminar on the Western. That's just, I love reading Westerns and talking about Westerns and trying to figure out the core dynamic and then the characteristics that it spits off and why it does this and why it does that. And I think it's probably all leading up to me trying my hand at some version of a Western, you know.
Oh, yeah, I'll look forward to that. Yeah, that'll be good. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, um, what questions didn't I ask you that you wanted me to ask you? We've got a few minutes left, and there's not another audience one, so.
I guess if you would have asked me, do you have any comic books coming out, I would have said yes, you know.
Oh, yes. Tell us.
Well, I guess in November, I'm part of Marvel Voices, and I got to write Silver Fox, Wolverine's first kind of girlfriend wife, or the first one we know about, you know, as readers. I act like he's a real person out there. You know, we're gonna find out more about him or something. But it was neat to do Silver Fox because the reason I selected Silver Fox when Marvel got a hold of me was that she's Blackfoot, and back when Blackfoot was encompassed Blackfeet, you know, and now that the 49th parallel came through and turned America into America, Canada into Canada, we are the Blackfeet that live in America, but I consider Silver Fox to be Blackfeet too. And so of course I got to write with her, or from her angle kind of, and got to put Sabretooth and Wolverine on the page, which was kind of fun. Whoever thought I'd get to play with those action figures, you know.
Awesome.
And also I have a graphic novel coming out, which I realize now I can't announce that either, but it's hopefully next year about this time, you know.
All right, well, we will all be watching for announcements for all these different things you're working on, and maybe even some of those quietly shelved novels to come back to life.
Yeah, who knows? I think they're all, you know, I sold my papers to Texas Tech Library, and I included boxes of novel manuscripts, so they're all on file, some version down there. You know, you can sit in their special collections and dial them up if anybody ever wants to, you know.
Oh, we have another question that's come in from Jill. How did you write the passage about seeing through the ceiling fan, the elk on the carpet below? Did you write this passage first or last in the drafts?
That was the very first part of anything of this novel I wrote. And I wrote it because my wife and I had just moved into a new rental house, and it had this high vaulted ceiling in the living room, and it had this one spotlight that was not beholden to any light switch or footfall or garage door or garbage disposal or anything. It would just come on at the most random times and go off when it chose. And I'm spooky, you know, and so I was like, I don't want a ghost to be up there playing games with me. And so I got on the 14-foot ladder and climbed up there to see if I could fix this. I don't know how I'm supposed to fix a light. I don't know how to fix stuff. And I'm up there messing around with it, and I look down and I forgot to turn the ceiling fan off, so it's whipping right by my side. And then I got to thinking about frame rates, and like with film, you have to go like 24 feet per second for the frames to blur into motion, I think. And I thought, I wonder how fast the blades of the ceiling fan are going past, and what could I be seeing once they gel into something? And could they be carving a tunnel into the past, or what's going on? And so I climbed down from the ladder without the light being fixed. It was never fixed the whole 2 years we lived there. And there, like a day or two later, I sat down and I thought, I'll just write a story. And then I realized, wait, I can write a novella. And then I realized, oh, hey, I can turn this into a novel, you know?
And Jill also wants to know, did you spend much time on location to capture the sense of place for the Only Good Indians, or was it more from memory and personal experience like you described with the fan?
Mostly, I mean, I spent a lot of time on the reservation out in the field after elk and just hanging around Browning. So I didn't make any special trips up to Browning to do research. It was all just already in my head and my heart, I guess, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the book really comes across that sense of heart in there.
Oh, thank you.
And then we'll end on this last question from Jamie, who wants to know any bucket list items you still want to write about. I imagine that's a long list.
Yeah, it is a long list. I've got a bucket. You know, I want to get the nerve up to do a possession novel. Like I'm terrified of possession narratives just terrify me, and I don't think it's for specifically religious reasons. It's like the same reason that I'm afraid of sleepwalkers. You know, if somebody comes over and they're sleeping on my couch and they say, oh yeah, by the way, I sleepwalk, I'm like, you know, I'm going to stay in a hotel tonight. Stay here in my house. Sleepwalkers terrify me. And just that sense that you're inhabited by something that's not you. You know, I mean, I deal with this a little bit in Mapping the Interior, but it's not actually possession. And I mean, maybe I'm afraid of possession because, you know, I'm part of a colonized people. You know, we've got people living in our land, and people dress
Yeah.
up like us for the Grammys and stuff. You know, and so it feels weird. That could be part of my irrational or completely irrational fear of possession novels. But I do want to get the nerve together to do it, and I think when I do it, I'll do it really, really fast because it's just like a tunnel I run through to go to the light. You know.
You don't want to stand still long enough for it
No,
to get you.
no, no.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we need a Stephen Graham Jones possession novel. Definitely. That'd be amazing. Well, that reaches our time, and I just want to thank you so much for joining us for the Fox Cities Book Festival. It's been such a pleasure getting to talk with you and hear about your projects, even even the ones you can't talk about. And yeah, hearing about your incredible new book, which if anyone listening has not yet read, The Only Good Indians, you absolutely must. And then work your way through the somewhere between 25 and 30 other books Stephen has out. So thanks
Thank
so much
you.
for joining us, everyone, and for joining us, Stephen.
Thank you. It was a great talk. Great talking to you, Sarah. A wonderful time.
It's always good talking to you. Take care of yourself.
Mhm. Bye.
Good night, everybody.